The boot is ready to be put together. First, hooks are added for speed laces, just like on ice skates. The lining is stretched into shape on a plastic foot mold. A felt insole board is coated with glue and pressed onto the bottom of the lining. The top layer of the boots is glued on, and the leather is stretched right over the toe. The boots and rubber sole are heated to over 90 degrees Celsius to activate the adhesive. A tech clamps the boot and sole together to complete the watertight seal. First, they test the sole's bond to the boot bottom. It takes almost 115 kilos of force before the sole gives way. The laces and eyelets are jerked around over 15,000 times and still refuse to stretch or tear. Then the boots are dunked in water and flexed 100,000 times to simulate a tour in swampy terrain. Life is tough enough for a Marine without worrying about what's underfoot. The right pair of boots isn't just part of the uniform. They're as critical to a soldier's survival as their weapon. Coming up on Battle Factory, a straight shooter that aims for accuracy. These bits of steel and spring and coated plastic will pack into a pistol that's one of the most popular sidearms ever produced. Designed in the Czech Republic, the CZ75 9mm pistol was first designed in 1975 behind the Iron Curtain. Its firepower and accuracy became legendary and has since been imitated by manufacturers around the world. Today, the CZ75 is the default sidearm for a long list of police and military forces. The pistol breaks down into 4 parts: the frame, the recoil spring, the barrel, and the slide. Every time the pistol is fired, recoil slams the slide back and pops out the spent shell. Then a spring bounces the slide forward, chambering a new bullet as it returns to firing position. The slide starts out as a piece of raw steel. A robotic arm grabs it and puts it into a computer-controlled cutting machine. The machine then carves out the basic shape. Automatically selecting from a series of cutting tools and drills, the machine further refines the slide, rounding the edges and cutting out an ejector hole to jettison the spent cartridges. Every member of the U.S. Special Forces, like the legendary Delta Force, is armed with a pistol. When a Black Hawk helicopter was shot down in Mogadishu, Somalia, 2 Special Forces snipers insisted on being airdropped into the fray in order to defend the wounded crew under siege by a mob of Somalian insurgents. Armed with only their sniper rifles and pistols, they established a perimeter to protect the wounded crew. The first soldier was killed, and the second stepped directly into the line of fire, holding them off with just his pistol until the very end. For the first time since the Vietnam War, both brave soldiers were posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The barrels of the CZ75 arrive coated in rust. They're actually left outside during the changing seasons to be weather cured, which toughens the metal, a CZ family recipe. The barrel is made from a special alloyed steel, heat treated for hardness. Holes are bored through the center, 4 barrels at a time. Then, the rusty outer bark is scraped off. The barrels are placed in a cold hammer forge. 4 hammers pound on the barrel at 1,000 hits per minute with 10 tons of pressure to stretch and toughen the steel. During this hammering process, a spiral-shaped tool forms corkscrew grooves on the inside walls, called rifling. When the bullet is fired, the rifling causes it to spin, which makes it fly straight and aim true. Then the rifling is inspected and the interior of the barrel is cleaned. The frame is made from a super-strength polymer reinforced with fiberglass. The spring absorbs the energy of the recoil and protects the frame from the impact of the slide. Every time the pistol is fired, the recoil sends the slide back into firing position, chambering a new round as it goes. Finally, the slide and barrel are joined with the frame. The gun is complete and ready for testing. Every CZ pistol is strong enough to be dropped from 4 meters with a round in the chamber onto a concrete surface. It will hold together, and the coated polymer frame won't crack under impact. Finally, the gun is loaded up and lit up at the firing range. Since its inception in 1975, there have been literally thousands of imitators of the CZ handgun. But whether it's on the firing range or the combat zone, when you need to give it your best shot, you want to reach for the real thing.